Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for a very special lunchtime webinar. We're thrilled to have some great guests on today. I'm your host, Varun Sriram, as always, and we're going to be talking about fueling the body for fitness, for performance, and for nutrition. And to lend some of their insights on this topic, we have two folks from the Lifetime Fitness gyms. We have Ilysha Evans, who is a registered dietitian at Lifetime, and we also have Samantha Wallace alongside, who is one of a personal trainer at Lifetime and a metabolic specialist as well. They're going to lend a bunch of insight over the next hour and really touch on some pretty interesting topics in terms of behavior and nutrition and a whole host of things that they see with their clients. And alongside also, we have Seth Bronheim, who's our registered dietitian and probably a familiar voice for many of you folks who have joined us on these sessions before. So, Seth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Varun. How you doing?
Doing very well. Excited to have Ilysha and Sam on with us. Ilysha, thanks so much for joining us. Love for you to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know, how you got started in the fitness industry and what the appeal was to you.
Thanks for having me. I think I got started here. I started as being a clinical dietitian, and really just wasn't a very good fit for me. So here is definitely more of a wellness background. I've always been interested in working with athletes, being an athlete myself growing up. I've done a lot of the wrong things as far as fueling goes before and after my workouts and just eating in general. And this kind of fit the mold of like what I was looking to do. I was actually able to watch improvements with my clients as opposed to just, like writing soap notes like a typical dietitian. But so I've learned a lot here. It's been a really good experience. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And Sam, thank you so much for joining us as well. Love for you to do the same, introduce yourself and, tell us how you got involved in fitness.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So I have a degree in exercise physiology. I've always been very interested in the science behind fitness as well as nutrition. I started off working at a very small studio. We had no really means of metabolic testing or nutrition or anything like that. So I branched out and started at Lifetime and moved my way up here to be the metabolic specialist. So I run all the testing programs that we have here. So I work very closely with Ilysha, and it's really great to be able to give our members and our clients more than just workouts and diet advice. So really love it here. So thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate, again, both of you being on. And so, sort of kickstart the discussion, you guys see a variety of clients, I'm sure, and all of them have, a variety of goals that they're trying to achieve. But, for your clients that come in and may not necessarily be fitness minded or nutrition minded right off the bat, are there any common challenges that you see these folks face when they first come see you? And Ilysha, we'll start with you.
So from a diet perspective, one of the things I always preach to people is that in order for something to stick, it's got to feel really easy. They can't have cravings, like their energy level should be good, they shouldn't feel deprived. And so in using the UCAN, it helps with a lot of those obstacles in making things feel easier along the way. So like a true behavior change is much easier to happen in those scenarios.
That's a really interesting way to put it. Sam, what have you seen yourself in terms of trying to get clients to make behavioral changes? Is it I'd love for you to piggyback off what Ilysha said and share some of your own experiences.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of times I have members coming to me and thinking that they have to do this very intense cardio all the time and really exert themselves in order to burn fat. So I see a lot of the wrong type of behaviors coming into it. And as a metabolic specialist, I set them into their own specific program with their low intensity zones, and you can really help them stay in that fat burning mode as well throughout the day. So I mean, it's great for diet as well as exercise. So it helps in both aspects.
And just we had somebody right in the chat. And I do want to mention at this point that if you guys have any questions for Ilysha and Sam, please do feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll definitely pose them to both of them here over the next 45 minutes. But folks just want to know where you guys are located, what club you're at.
Or Algonquin.
So yep, they're at the Algonquin Club, which is the Lifetime Fitness in Illinois. So let's continue a little bit with the topic that we started on. When a client comes in, and let's start off with weight loss. First of all, because I'm sure both of you guys are seeing a lot of folks that are looking for weight loss. What are some of the simple things that you would recommend to a client from a nutrition perspective, and more so than what they should eat, maybe from a mindset, how they should think about nutrition? How are you encouraging folks who are looking to lose weight to think about their daily nutrition?
So I try to steer people away from the typical calorie counting. I definitely encourage journaling and behavior changes. So I really talk about incorporating the right concepts with them. So, making sure that their blood sugar stay balanced by eating enough vegetables, protein at every meal and snack. And like I said before, the goal is to make it feel easy. So if they're crashing, if they're spiking their blood sugars, those are going to create cravings. And then obviously it's not as easy of a process. So in the journals, I have them write down obviously everything that they're eating, but not tracking calories. I have them track symptoms though, like is their energy improving? Are their sleep patterns improving? Some people are tracking their blood sugar, so they're writing that down. So everyone likes to see change. So as well as seeing change on the scale, they can see change in symptoms along the way too. And sometimes they don't always realize that until they really look back and see some of those trends happening. And you can definitely, make those things improve at a much faster pace. And it makes things much easier for people, which means that they're much more likely to stick to it for a longer period of time as well.
Sam, for you, Ilysha talked a little bit about the blood sugar, and when did you, as a fitness professional, really realize the impact that blood sugar has on somebody who's looking to lose weight? And maybe you could even, from your perspective, share the importance of managing blood sugar when it comes to weight loss.
Like Ilysha said, it's very common beliefs that, cereal in the morning is very healthy, granola bar is a healthy snack, but what people don't realize is how much it elevates the blood sugar and how that's horrible for crashing as well. So UCAN has been a good substitute and a good diet, something good to add to your diet, as well as for doing cardio. And my own perspective on that, I actually did a fitness show myself a couple of months ago, and I really understood, what crashing was like when I would eat the way I would. And the UCAN, especially at night, would help my cravings tremendously. So it helped me get through my cardio. It helped me stabilize my blood sugars after my workout, so I wasn't hungry all the time. So it was much easier for me to actually tell people that it works because I experienced it for myself. So it was a really great thing for me to add to my clients.
So Seth, I'd love for you to chime in here as Ilysha and Sam both alluded a little bit to UCAN in terms of reducing the cravings. How is the super starch and the UCAN keeping blood sugar stable? What's going on there, and how is that stabilization of blood sugar tied into reducing cravings?
Right. So, it's very interesting what Ilysha was saying, and to take a step back, Varn, my question to Ilysha is, clients, have a choice, especially if a client comes into you, the question really is, if they're consuming things like cereal and granola bars, what is it like for them to transition from that way of eating to, your proteins, your veggies? Because what we've seen is, throughout lifetime, especially the RDs are using UCAN as a tool to transition them, off those poor foods and transition more toward, your proteins and veggies. So you're talking about, you don't want your clients to feel deprived. How have you specifically used UCAN to help those clients, transition their habits?
So, well, I do always start with breakfast because I think it's the most important meal of the day, but for a lot of reasons. So I truly feel that if they start their day out right, then the whole rest of the day is easier. So you made the suggestion when you came and talked to us one time, and it's worked so well with a lot of my clients, was like the protein shake first thing in the morning. So it's super convenient, but they're adding, protein powder with a scoop of the UCAN and some type of good quality fat. So some people are using avocado or almond butter, and then even better is if they're adding, like, blending in like spinach or kale or something like that with that too. And so that combination just holds them over so well. And first thing in the morning, like when that's going to set the precedent for the rest of the day. If they start out the right way, the whole rest of the day, they're way more likely to succeed. Whereas if they start the day out with their blood sugar spiked, then the rest of the day is just going to be way more challenging. So that breakfast part has worked really well as that typical 2 or 3 p.m. crash that people feel. So by incorporating the UCAN and a lot of times, replacing another like typical snack type food, they'll do like another shake. And when I do get people to add those vegetables into their shakes, because really it doesn't really taste like anything when it's actually in the shakes. That's one of the best ways I found people to add, one of the best ways to get some of my clients to use vegetables that have really started with being anti-vegetable. So we get that blood sugar stabilization, especially with that added fiber, their protein, and so their worst times of their day are covered.
Right. Well, Ilysha, by the way, you've gotten Varun to. Varun is now hiding spinach in his shakes, so he's a convert.
Perfect.
Absolutely. After we spoke a few weeks ago, and you suggested that, it definitely, like you said, very difficult to taste and a great way to sneak a good serving of vegetables into a shake. But Ilysha, I wanted to, this may be very apparent to you, but for folks that are listening in, I want to sort of go through the thought process in what you're recommending your clients add, say, to a breakfast shake, and really describe what each aspect of that shake is doing for the client. So, when we talk about starting the morning off with a shake that includes, first a scoop of protein powder, what is the purpose of that protein in the morning?
So I would say that would kickstart their metabolism, and protein by far is your most metabolically stimulating type of food, and it takes longer to break down. So when it's combined, like with the UCAN, the UCAN is meant to, keep those blood sugar levels stable for about 2 hours after taking it. But when it combines with the protein, it goes for an even more extended period of time, and it curbs some of that hunger as well.
Okay, excellent. So then you alluded to the UCAN, which is meant to keep the blood sugar stable and give them that steady feeling of energy through the morning. And then you also alluded to the adding some fat to the shake. What's the purpose of that? Whether it's in the form of an almond butter or a peanut butter, why are you recommending some fat in the shake?
So I guess I should back up. So like I mentioned, like the protein being like one of your most metabolically stimulating type of foods, and I would say that the added fat is mostly what would curb that hunger for an even more extended period of time. And I'm really seeing that it's holding people like 5-6 hours just easily, just with that protein shake in the morning, and just feeling super comfortable going into lunch, even if they're starting really early in the morning, and they're just not ravenous at all, and way more likely to make correct choices at that point too.
So this is a little bit of a tangent, but with what you're saying, why do you think that that we've been told for so long and so many people are conditioning to eating a bowl of cereal or starting the morning off with something like a bagel or something that's full of carbs? Where did that really come from?
Well, we used to be so into this whole low fat type of thing, and people are still so set on the calorie counting as well. And so people are looking at calories, they're looking at fat, and so they can have a bowl of like Special K, and it could be virtually fat-free, but people don't realize that it gets stored as fat just immediately in the body, and they're way more likely to eat more calories throughout the day. And I also think that, like, if you look at our food pyramid, and it's changed slightly, but like ours compared to like every other nation is just so different, and so our grains are just so much more of parts of ours as opposed to any other nation. And so I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that we just grow a lot of grains here. And so like those have been pushed for a long time. So I think just some of the fads in the past, like the thought process of calorie counting as opposed to quality, and just like we've always been raised on this food pyramid that we've had.
It's interesting. Yeah. And I'm sure that, when you first have a client that's coming in that's looking to lose some weight and they uh, assume that they may not have that level of nutrition knowledge that you're trying to impart on them. Is there any resistance initially when they're trying to lose weight and you're saying you need to add fat to your diet? I mean, are people saying, what are you talking about? Or are they able to comprehend that?
I definitely get both, but I think when I explain it to them and what happens when insulin is released and how that creates fat storage and a crash, and when I can relate it to a lot of the symptoms they feel throughout the day before they've even told me maybe about it, then they get it. So I would say more often than not, drastically more often than not, once I go through the explanation of what happens with blood sugars and why everything is easier when you incorporate the right types of foods to keep blood sugars balanced throughout the day, I think that then they understand, and then they can pick out symptoms that they've been feeling, and things start to make sense to them.
Go ahead, Seth.
So I'll chime in, Varun. So Ilysha, what you're really doing, for example, most people who try to lose weight, they limit calories and they might have like a granola bar for breakfast, thinking, okay, it's only 100 calories, so if I keep my calories low, but then they'll compensate later in the day. So, the strategy you're using and the one is you're really being more proactive. You're really just having them front load with this protein, fat, UCAN, and veggie shake. That's really just a powerful way to keep blood sugar steady, and then they're not going to overeat at lunch, and they're going to really start the day controlling it, which is so different, but it's really what's effective, because if you start with too low of a calorie breakfast, you'll just catch up later in the day.
Definitely. And I think even when people food journal and they do the wrong thing in breakfast, and I asking them to write down like some of those behavior symptoms or some of the symptoms that they're feeling throughout the day, they can totally associate, when they've had a good breakfast versus a bad breakfast, what happens later in the day.
And so go ahead, Varn.
No, I wanted to get Sam to chime in here for a moment too. So Sam, as a metabolic specialist, when you're doing some of this testing on clients that come in, for somebody that comes in and sees you and needs to is looking to lose weight, what are you seeing in their metabolism that is sort of a red flag or that may be a little haywire to you, before you guys put them on the program and get them to rethink their nutrition?
A lot of times I will see really deconditioned people, fatigue out very quickly during our testing. Basically, we get them progressively to an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10 on the treadmill, and they fatigue out quite fast, and their fat-burning levels just are down. So they're initially very high sugar burners most of the time. And UCAN is just a great supplement in addition to low-intensity cardio to implement into their routine to change them to be more fat-burning while they're doing cardio.
And if you could, really, I'm sure for folks in the audience, this would be beneficial when you're trying to get them to cross over and become more fat burners than sugar burners. How exactly are you recommending that they implement UCAN, into their workouts, and maybe, what may even to the level of detail of what exactly, like Ilysha described her shake. I mean, what exactly are you having them recommending that they consume?
I recommend that they do the UCAN with either ice water or an almond milk about 30 minutes before they do their cardio or their strength training, as well as 1 scoop afterwards with their protein shake. So, and then we add like sometimes the fruit afterwards, but beforehand, definitely just either almond milk or just plain ice water to stabilize those blood sugars.
So the benefit of UCAN before, in keeping their blood sugar stable is to give them the energy to get through the workout. And as you both alluded to, when blood sugar is stable, the body's able to burn more fat. So that's why you're having them consume UCAN before the workout. in your eyes, why are you telling them to consume it post-workout? That can go to either one of you.
Post-workout to continue the fat burning process. So also to stabilize blood sugars even after the workout, so they aren't ravenous for carbohydrates after the workout.
Okay, interesting. Seth, go ahead, jump in here. I'm sure you have a couple questions too.
So this is for, we can start off with Ilysha. Since UCAN is a new concept and it's also a new ingredient, how do you talk about UCAN to your clients? How do you describe, what the carbohydrate is, or how do you describe it to your clients?
So I pretty much tell them exactly how you described it to us, which is that it's a non-GMO cornstarch that's went through a heat and moisture process to elongate the chain. And I compare it to a typical carbohydrate. I've actually, the slide that you have up, I've used this a lot with people to show the difference. So whereas a typical carbohydrate is going to spike your blood sugars and then crash you afterwards, the UCAN is just going to keep your blood sugar level stable throughout. So, throughout, like, no matter what, if your blood sugars are stable, you're going to be able to burn more fat. You're going to have less cravings, and throughout your workouts, you're going to be able to last for a longer period of time without crashing. You'll be able to work out at higher intensity, and it'll feel easy, and you'll still be able to burn fat, and you'll have less of a chance of overtraining at that point. So I guess that's how I explain it.
And you also, I know you've had some clients, and I know a typical client, everybody's stressed these days, and I know, at Algonquin, you do some really interesting testing because I think you are the only nutrition and metabolism center at Lifetime. You've done some interesting things implementing UCAN with your clients with adrenal fatigue. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So for someone that's in adrenal fatigue, basically what that means is that they've been in this constant state of stress and have been overproducing cortisol for a long period of time. And the stress could have been from overtraining, which is what we see a lot in endurance athletes. It could be from just emotional stress that you think about. It could be from processed foods, too much caffeine, but whatever the case, it elicits the same type of internal response, which is this overproduction of cortisol. And at some point, the adrenals just can't take it anymore, and they just kind of fatigue out. And so this type of person could feel exhausted all day long. If they worked out with any type of intensity, it would make it worse. But with the UCAN, because it makes it basically so that you're not overtraining, or during the typical workout, if we can assume that always people are going to increase cortisol and inflammation, and as long as you recover afterwards properly, it will bring it back down. Well, the UCAN is the best way to recover and to provide the right fuel beforehand. And so they're able, even through adrenal fatigue, to be able to get through a workout and still feel like they have more energy after the workout, as opposed to the typical person with adrenal fatigue who wouldn't feel like they'd ever be able to work out. And if they did push themselves to, afterwards they would completely crash, either the rest of the day, or if it was at night, even the rest of the next day. And so we've been able to see people heal their adrenals and still be able to work out, which means that they're still able to see really good results in the process, and don't have to wait till after their adrenals heal to start that.
Ilysha, now I think it's always helpful there's many people in the audience that may know it, but it's always helpful to define certain concepts or terms. Can you, in layman's terms, tell us what adrenal fatigue is, and maybe how prevalent it is? I mean, you may not have an exact number, but maybe loosely how prevalent it is.
So, I would say adrenal dysfunction is one of the major root problems, or one of the stats that I have is 90 to 95% of why people dysfunction anywhere else in the body comes back to some type of adrenal dysfunction. And so this could be anything from cancers to just inflammatory issues to thyroid issues. And so it just really associates all these different areas in the body, gut issues. And so what adrenal fatigue is so adrenals release two hormones, cortisol and DHEA. And so cortisol is best known as a belly fat storage hormone, but it also, when it's overproduced, makes you crave carbohydrates. It can attack the thyroid, the pancreas, it'll affect sex hormones, and so it does all these different things. And it's produced in response to any type of stress in the body. So like I was saying before, like overtraining, a lack of sleep, food intolerances, like all these things would be different types of stress in the body. And so whereas a normal curve would start out like highest first thing in the morning and then just gradually break down throughout the day, for someone who's chronically overproducing cortisol from whatever type of stress is placed on the body, that pattern wouldn't actually be able to break down. And so it would stay consistently elevated all day long. And if it's like that long enough period of time, the adrenals just can't stand to keep that level up. And so they just exhaust out, they fatigue out. And so that curve that initially started out highest in the morning and kind of gradually went down throughout the day is now just basically flatlined.
Okay, that's a great explanation. So I think that's very beneficial for folks to understand exactly what you mean. So this might be oversimplifying it, but I think it's also always good for people to hear something like this. So say I'm your typical client. I want to lose about 25 to 30 pounds, and I'm eating a fairly average American diet: bowl of cereal in the morning, sandwich, some sort of sandwich for lunch, and then maybe carbohydrates in the form of a pasta for dinner. When I come in and see you and tell you that weight loss is my goal, where do you even start? I mean, where does the conversation go first, and what types of what behavioral changes? What are you going to focus on initially to help me get those results?
So I kind of assess like where they're at, like as far as like readiness to change and how much of a struggle this will be for them. So some people are just tell me what to do and I'll start doing it, and some people are more resistant. But I would say I would always start with breakfast, and because like I said before, like making that meal right every day. Like I always say, like if you're gonna mess up anything in the day, just don't make it breakfast. Because even if they do that right, they're just gonna be more likely to succeed the rest of the day. And a lot of times outside of that, we together try to pick like one goal at a time that they think that they can accomplish. So, sometimes it's like a vegetable goal, or it could be a protein goal. But I guess it's just kind of based off of where they're at when they're starting. But I guess to answer your initial question, breakfast would be where I start.
Okay, and then how about from a workout perspective? And Sam, maybe you can start by chiming in here. If you're faced with somebody, in the same situation I just presented to Ilysha, how are you having them start to work out in order to achieve some success and to work towards that goal of losing that weight?
Well, like Ilysha said, everybody is different. So I'll always initially ask how many days they actually plan on coming to the club and working out. Based on how many days they say, I might recommend a couple days a week with the trainer. No matter who I have in front of me, I always recommend doing our metabolic assessments, because it tells each person individually where they should be heart rate-wise to burn the most fat. So no matter if it's to run a marathon or if it's to lose 100 pounds, they need to figure out where they should be in their fat burning zones. I also incorporate nutrition into my consultations as well. Ilysha and I work very closely together. And like we were going back to before, the lab testing as well, I talk to almost every single person about their energy levels, because it relates so much to our metabolic testing. So if I have someone who is in adrenal fatigue and they're doing very intense cardio, it's only making them worse. It'll make their fat loss actually progress. So I look very much at each person internally, what's going on, and then talk about dietary changes, supplements as well. So the UCAN, I implement that into there as well.
Seth, go ahead. I'm sure I know you've got some more stuff for Ilysha and Sam.
Yeah. So, and Ilysha, because you're a nutrition metabolism center, so interesting. So what are the things that you're testing? And, I know if you maybe a client example of their use of UCAN, it could just be as simple as you started them with breakfast. But if you did have someone, let's in terms of UCAN usage, if you did have someone who's coming in and you're starting with breakfast, and they start, they get into using UCAN before breakfast, How else are you using UCAN as a tool for them throughout the day? And it could just be before workouts, but do you have a client maybe that you can think about that and how you've kind of worked UCAN into their program?
So I feel like UCAN has done so much for so many different clients in a bunch of different ways. So I have one person who actually uses it at night, and he sleeps better at night. And this client also checks his blood sugars every morning, and so it's completely affected his fasting blood sugar levels in the morning. So I think when we started, they were high 130s, and now they're in the 80s, and it was fast. Like it was like within that first month, like his blood sugars were down in the morning. It was really incredible, and he was making dietary changes too. But to see that type of drop, I mean, there was something else going on there, and I've definitely seen that type of pattern happen in other people. This person tracked religiously, so I could see the trends really easily. But also just helping to be able to stay asleep throughout the entire night is across the board been helpful with many clients. So a lot of people are just waking up, their blood sugars get too low, or they eat, or a lot of people are eating carbs at nighttime, and they spike their blood sugars right before bed. That's going to affect their whole sleep patterns. But the UCAN will help with cravings at nighttime, and then also keep them asleep throughout the entire night.
I'm sorry. A couple follow-ups from the audience on what you just said. Mary wants to know, how do you track blood sugar?
So for some of my clients, they check their blood sugars every morning. So like they've been instructed by their doctor. They were a lot of them have been doing it before they even started with me. Some of them check just in the morning. Some of them checking throughout the day periodically. So a lot of times these are people who are diligently do not want to be on medication. And they come in and they say, I do not want to be diabetic. I don't want to be on any type of diabetes medication. And so they're diligently checking these things, and we're making changes as we go. So it's all that. They're checking the blood sugars, and they're including it in their journal. And
then that can be done. That's by buying. You could buy a glucose a test strip at a pharmacy, correct?
Correct. Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then Jim wants to know, for what is a normal blood sugar level that somebody should want to be at?
First thing in the morning, I would say normal, they say, is below 100. I would say optimal is more like below 90.
Okay. And then Kristen asks, when you talked about the gentleman that had the blood sugar of 130 prior to implementing the UCAN at night, what is the negative effect of waking up in the morning with that blood sugar so high?
So basically the pancreas is just working in overdrive. So if blood sugars, like your fasting blood sugars is your best way to say, what your blood sugars are like. And if they're consistently high, that means your pancreas is constantly overworking to have to produce insulin, which first of all means you're overproducing this fat storage hormone. And it also means that eventually your pancreas is just not going to be able to do it anymore. And that's when you have to start taking medication to fix that, as opposed to your body just doing it like it should. So in the case of UCAN, where it just balances your blood sugars for you, it kind of gives your pancreas a rest, I would say. So it gives it a chance to heal. It's not having to release insulin all the time.
Great. That's perfect. I think that answered all that. Sam, how about? Yeah, absolutely, Seth. Go ahead.
So Ilysha, at night, you're talking about your clients using it. Is this after dinner? Is it right before they go to bed? And is it the plain UCAN or the cran raspberry? Are they mixing it with protein? What are they doing at night?
Most of them are using the plain UCAN, and they're mixing it with. I actually have some clients that have bought those freezer pop things that you just stick in the freezer, and you make your own mixture into them. But they're actually mixing protein powder and the UCAN and almond milk, and you have a chocolate dynamic greens powder, which is just antioxidant powder. Or some people are using the chocolate protein powder. But they'll put them in these popsicle holders and freeze them, and it's like a fudgesicle after dinner.
Wow, that's creative.
All right,
so so that's been really popular.
You just gave me my dessert for tonight. That's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was, yeah. One of my clients suggested it, and I've been using it for all sorts of my clients because they love it. But like otherwise, like a shake is really popular, and people usually love them because they feel like they just like it's treats. You know, it tastes good. It's like vanilla or chocolate, and so the UCAN kind of just tastes like whatever your protein powder tastes like.
And then those folks that are using it, we're talking about at night, and you've talked about it for breakfast in the morning. For folks that are going to, use UCAN, during the workday, what's been the easiest thing, or how have they combined it, in terms of just basic usage? Do they keep a tub at work? Do they bring dynamic greens with them and mix it? What is your recommendation to make things easiest and most compliant for your clients for use at that 2 or 3 o'clock time, like you were talking about?
So, some people will leave it at work, but I have a lot of people who will just every morning put their mixture that they want in a blender bottle, and then when they're ready for it, they'll just add the liquid. So it's water for a lot of people, or for some people, they'll keep some unsweetened almond milk or coconut milk in their fridges at work and just have it for them. But they just put in their blender bottle ahead of time and then use it that way. So just the powder's ready. Or I have people who bag everything like in the right portions. They just have all these bags and they just take one at a time.
Interesting. Sam, how about for you? Do you have any either a personal story or a client story with UCAN, somebody that's experienced some good success with it?
Yeah, I have a client that is back to back during her day with appointments, and it was always extremely hard for her to implement any diet changes because she was always constantly going throughout her day. And when she got home, she would be absolutely starving. And of course, the first thing she'd go for would be, processed food, pizza, and whatnot. So we implemented UCAN into her diet throughout the day, as well as before and after she worked out. And she saw that blood sugar stabilization, and she just wasn't as hungry when she got home. She was able to make the correct choices as opposed to just going for the most unhealthy thing. So it was very easy for her to change her diet in that aspect. So yeah. And also, as well as for myself, like I mentioned earlier, I was in a fitness show, and I would be craving at night. I found myself throughout very often. I would just mix the plain UCAN and water, and I would be completely fine. So I experienced that blood sugar stabilization as well, and it would keep me full. So it's really great.
So by and large, it sounds like you both, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but are you really suggesting maybe to your clients that whatever time of the day it is that they're experiencing these cravings and they're prone to having, making poor nutrition choices, are you recommending they try to implement UCAN at that time of the day?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, we can look back and see maybe well, this is why you're crashing there. But what it comes down to for a lot of people is they just don't have the time to do eat, like every 3 to 4 hours, or have all this stuff prepared. It's not in people's lifestyle. So convenience is a big thing for people. And so UCAN just allows people to have that convenience and still do the right thing for their health and to make things easy and so on.
We have did either of you guys we had a question about regarding endurance. Now, did either of you guys work with any endurance athletes?
I did, and I worked actually with some people from the run club too.
Okay.
And so that was huge. And when we were talking about adrenal fatigue, I would say that endurance athletes are one of the biggest people we see adrenal fatigue with, because it's so hard not to overtrain and do fuel the right way before, during, after your workout. And so definitely that's made a huge difference. And I totally implemented I asked last time about when you guys came to our club about the how to make the goos with the UCAN, where you just added a small amount of liquid with the protein powder. And so I have a couple of clients doing that right now, and that works perfectly.
Awesome. So Tao is asking for an ultra athlete who's running and riding 50 to 100 miles on a regular basis. is there any like general nutrition protocol that you would recommend? I guess both that encompasses UCAN and maybe outside of UCAN as well. Is that something that you've had experience with?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing, like with any type of athlete, is, and it's obviously harder the longer the duration is to keep your blood sugars balanced. Because once they crash, like you don't have a sugar source to pull from, like you're just going to start to pull from protein and muscle and create inflammation and hit that wall and so on. And so it's just about doing it. It's just about keeping it balanced for a longer period of time in those cases. And so, like making sure that you have enough of those things, to make your own brews out of them. Or I guess if you're on a bike, you can be drinking, or the bites recipes on your line, on your site, has worked for like cyclists.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll make sure we'll send that recipe out to everyone who's in attendance, in a follow up email. But making UCAN into a solid form and being able to consume it on the bike would be very helpful. And Tao, we won't focus too much on this because we only have a few more minutes, but in general, if you want to take a scoop of UCAN about every 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how frequently you need it, that's what we found that's worked well for any type of endurance athlete or ultra endurance athlete. So that would really be the key. Seth, we got about 6 or 7 more minutes with Ilysha and Sam. Go ahead. What I'm sure you got a couple more things you'd like for them to address.
Yeah, I know, in terms of, different types of workouts, you have those folks that might not, we've been told, 80% of the clients at Lifetime have some type of weight loss goal. But let's say someone's, eating pretty good and, they just want to, improve their workouts for Team Boot Camp. Will they will it be just as simple as using UCAN as a pre-workout snack? Or do you have any advice on someone transitioning from an old habit? Let's say we had so many people who used to have a banana for a workout. Is it just as simple as swapping whatever they used to eat for UCAN before? Or is there any, I remember one time I think, Ilysha, you were saying how most people, the most common question you get is, what should I have before my workout? But you had said that you look at someone's energy 5 hours before their workout. Do you have any comments on how someone should think about fueling for their workout? Let's just say, if their workout's at 6 o'clock at night, is there any typical way they should be eating throughout the day? And then how are they implementing UCAN when they're working out after a 12-hour workday?
So I guess like with their pre-workout, it would depend like when the last time they ate was. I think maybe that's what we were talking about. So, like what type of like snack was their last snack? So like if all they had was like a string cheese, like they can make their pre-workout more substantial. So like Sam was talking about, like doing a scoop of UCAN before your workout with water, almond milk, which definitely would be sufficient enough to keep your blood sugar level stable. But if there's actual like hunger involved as well, and they haven't been eating for a while, I would have them just add like protein powder to it. And everyone's digestive system is differently, so I guess it would just depend how fast they break things down. But those two things break down very quickly. But if they can handle it, they could also throw in, again, like blended, like spinach or like a good quality fat, especially for someone who doesn't want to lose weight, like a good quality fat in there as well, just to keep it maintained throughout their entire workout. But I would just say that, like as long as they can break it down, it doesn't feel like it's sitting there, that would be a positive thing before their workout. And the UCAN is so easy on the digestive system. But I have said, so, like I'll tell people, like if you haven't eaten for 6 hours and all you have before your workout is UCAN, like your blood sugars will still be fine. Like, so you'll still be able to make it through your workout and it'll still be positive. Like they might be hungry, which isn't like the easiest thing in the world, but like at least their blood sugars will be balanced and like their workout wouldn't have been detrimental in that case.
And then for those folks who are using the UCAN before their workout, in terms of, you're talking about how you have people report symptoms. Are there, some people who don't have UCAN before, but they're consuming the classic orange juice and protein shake or, fast-acting energy bar or caffeine, Red Bull, sugary drink. When people have UCAN before, what do they notice after the workout?
I think when most of my clients have taken it before, and not only can they get through the workout easier, but post-workout, when they add that into their shake, it holds them over, and a lot of people are just very, very hungry after they work out, after they've exerted themselves. And having those blood sugars stable after the workout allows them to be able to make the right choices afterwards, as opposed to, like I said with my client, going for, a food that's high in carbs.
Interesting. And so, the way when you're coaching people on nutrition, it seems like both of you, and what I've seen, especially at Lifetime and from other registered dietitians, is when someone's trying to lose weight, willpower is the one thing that can really get in their way. That's hunger. That's fatigue, and UCAN's actually a nutritional tool that's being used for behavior modification.
Definitely, hands down.
Fantastic.
I'd say, like, I'll ask people, like, what kind of diets have they tried in the past, or things that they've done in the past, and they've done the typical fad type of things. And now the next question I'll ask them is, like, so what happened? Like, why did you stop? Because some people lose weight, but, like, to keep that weight off is the challenge, and because it negatively affected their metabolism at that point. And so, usually things that come back are like, I like just got sick of counting my calories all the time. I was too busy. All these things come back. Like I was hungry all the time. Like, it's just not realistic. And so, like, we just want to focus on quality, ensuring that as they're losing their weight, their metabolism is not being negatively affected at all. In fact, it's like maintaining it, but ideally building, and that they're losing fat and not muscle in the process, and that it feels easy, and so I feel like when they're doing the right things, it does feel easy. When they're doing the wrong things, then it feels like a diet.
And have you, in terms of before and afters, do you have any reports on, within the first month or maybe a 3-month period of UCAN use? Do you have any weight loss numbers that you can share, or not necessarily?
I would say my most interesting scenario was one of my clients who was a very clean eater. This was like before, like it must have been right when UCAN was kind of being brought to our club. But she was a very clean eater. She was doing so many of the right things. I always thought that she was overtraining, but she wasn't really listening to me in that aspect. But she felt good, so I wasn't as concerned. And so when this came out, when I was like, okay, so when you do all your 2-hour workouts, without replacing everything the right way. So all I had her do was add in the UCAN before and UCAN and protein afterwards, and she didn't change anything with diet. And she went down 3 sizes, like pant sizes, in like about a month and a half. And this was like a group fitness fanatic. Like she would do like a class, and then she would do another class right afterwards. And so she spread the word like wildfire to all the group fitness studios, or to all the other people in like the group fitness classes. So they are like loving UCAN.
Fantastic. So she used clothing size as her measure, which is the most important thing, because you want to see fat loss, not just the scale go down.
Right. And she was so unique because like she literally didn't have any, like her diet was so good before that. And so it was just that one change, and it wasn't even like she took away anything to add that in. It was just that she added in her pre and post workout.
Right, because she was obviously spending those 2 hours in a higher and maximal fat burning, which is fantastic.
Now she is, yeah.
Ilysha and Sam, we know you guys do have to run, so we want to get you out here in time. To everyone in the audience, I know there's still several questions, and we actually want to bring a couple people on to share some of their own stories. So Seth and I are going to hang out here for a little bit longer and keep chatting with you. But in closing, is there anything? I'll let both of you sort of close with any final thoughts that you have that either we may not have covered, or if you want to just reinforce something that you feel is important for folks to understand.
I think that implementing nutrition with working out, obviously, is going to get the clients to see way faster results. The UCAN implemented throughout the day is really a very convenient way to keep the blood sugar stable, and has worked positively for every single person that I've suggested it for, so as well as myself.
It's fantastic. And Ilysha, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with what Sam said, and I would say that one of the reasons that I think that we're both passionate about it is because we both use it ourselves. So I feel like as long as you're using it, then you could speak to it very, very well about the ways that it works and how and use your experience as your method of explanation to them. And I would say too that the UCAN bites recipe that you said that you were going to send out. I talked about the shakes during the day, but that's actually been a really good scenario also, like super easy for people to just pack that, and they love it. They think it tastes like a treat. So
awesome. Well, we'll definitely make sure we send that that everyone who's in here can look for that in a follow-up message, as well as a copy of this recording. You guys are both a wealth of knowledge, and it's really fantastic to get your insights as folks that are working and sort of doing the real world application of this every day. So can't thank you enough for joining us. We look forward to catching up with you again when we're out in Chicago for the Chicago Marathon. But thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you guys giving up an hour of your day.
Thank you, Ilysha and Sam.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, Seth. So we got a few questions and would actually like to try to bring. We got some pretty great stories coming in the chat. So I want to see if I could bring a couple folks on, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to get the technology right or not. But let's see if we can bring Scott on to share his story. Scott, how's it going? Are you with us?
Yes. How are you?
Fantastic, Scott. We can hear you great. Thanks. Sorry to put you here on the spot a little bit, but you'd shared a great story in the chat, so I would love for you to tell the folks in the audience your UCAN story.
Yeah. Well, actually, I am an endurance cyclist, and I live in Santa Monica, California. And I've been riding a master cyclist, and we do a lot of endurance.
All right. Looks like, unfortunately, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with Scott. I'm going to put you on hold for a minute, Scott, and see if we might be able to bring you back on. Sorry about that, but we did have a question actually from Anthony, and Seth, you may be able to address this one. Anthony wanted to know how many servings of UCAN. We could have posed this to Ilysha and Sam, but you know this very well yourself. How many servings of UCAN would you recommend per day for a weight loss client?
So most of the time, it's a breakfast shake and then mid-afternoon, and usually that's on workout days, and that's on non-workout days, and workout days it's breakfast and then before and after workouts. We've had if you're someone, so it's really anywhere between 1 and up to 3 scoops. I remember I was speaking with, I'm not sure if Mary Showers on the line from Westminster, Colorado, Lifetime, but she told me she had someone have UCAN morning, noon, and night because they were so metabolically deranged with their insulin levels and their blood sugar. So, if some people use UCAN to swap out soda, they might tell their client, every can of soda you have, you're going to have a scoop of UCAN instead. So it kind of depends on the situation. So it's anywhere between 1 to up to 3 scoops. We've had some people simply use it as a breakfast shake, and then they might be fine the rest of the day. And then other people are using it as a breakfast shake at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as a tool that way. And some people who are doing workouts in the morning might use it at a scoop before a 5 a.m. workout routine as their breakfast shake. And then that might be their servings of UCAN for the day, or they might, if they're trying to replace the granola bar, or it seems like in the office the feedback we get is it's someone's birthday every day, and there's always cupcakes or donuts or something. So they might simply use UCAN as a way to keep them steady, as that behavioral tool that Ilysha and Samantha had alluded to. But we've seen people get results, using it as a tool on 1 scoop per day. So it's not something you need to be having flowing through the body the entire day, but it works out at strategic times, and breakfast and mid-afternoon are the 2 most popular times, especially for weight loss. And if you're hungry, you can always add a scoop of protein, because that protein will help curb that hunger in the stomach, and the UCAN will keep your glucose steady and curb that hunger that occurs in the brain.
Switching gears a little bit, Sarah had asked us a question a few minutes ago about using UCAN during running a marathon. And Sarah wanted to know, can I take 3 to 4 scoops at once to last the whole marathon? So Seth, this is something that you and I talk to folks about all the time. Why don't you walk Sarah? There's a few different strategies in terms of using UCAN for the marathon, and maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you have, you want to have probably the most you want to load before a marathon, I think, is 3 scoops at most. And that's just because the additive effect is so variable. So we have a lot of people who have 2 scoops before a marathon, and they might have a scoop at mile 10 and a scoop at mile 17, kind of, having a UCAN a third of the way in terms of distance. One person who had emailed me feedback, Carrie Kahn for the Boston Marathon, she had PR'd and said she had 2 packets 45 minutes before, and then a packet at mile 16.5. So the 2 options are to have, I'll speak in terms of packets, but I know there's a lot of folks that buy our tubs. So 1 packet equals around a scoop and a half. So they might have a scoop and a half before, 30 minutes before, a scoop and a half at mile 10, and a scoop and a half at mile 17. The other option is to have more before, let's say 3 scoops before, and then have only a serving at around mile 16 and a half, like Kerry, who had emailed us about PRing for the marathon. I mean, we have people that have 2 scoops and it lasts them 21 miles, but the way you get those effects is that you use UCAN during your training. My wife's training for a marathon right now, and I see the amount of time and effort and training runs you have. You have so many opportunities to figure out how UCAN is going to work best for you. And she's had, 2 scoops to last her 18 miles. So I know that if she adds a serving in at around mile 15 or 16, that's going to carry her through the 26.2 miles. So you got to use UCAN during your training and really get used to it and teach the body to burn that fat for fuel and allow your body to experience what it's like to have such steady blood sugar.
So, Sarah, we also, if you do follow us on social media or pay attention to our blog, coming up in later this week, I'm going to do a blog post that's very specific to marathon training. So Seth may have answered your questions there, but do stay tuned. That's generationucan.com/blog. You'll see a lot of different examples of how folks are using it for the marathon. But like Seth alluded to, the trick is to really figure out whatever that serving that you take pre-run is, how long that's going to last for you. And then you can figure out when you need to redose. So then, you sort of want to figure out, am I going to take a larger serving pre-run and only have to redose once during the marathon? Or am I going to take, maybe 2 scoops pre-run and then redose at mile 10 and mile 17? So that's what you want to play around with.
And Varn, we should just mention the water aspect. There's no amount of water really needed for absorption. So we have folks concentrate it into a gel the way Ilysha was talking about. They might take a scoop and use only 5 to 6 ounces of water. A very popular thing is to use our plain UCAN with 6 to 8 ounces of unsweetened almond milk and cinnamon, as a lot of our 5 a.m. runners do that, or even those doing team boot camp at Lifetime. So you can really concentrate it, because a lot of people just don't want to consume a lot of liquid before they go out. If you're consuming 3 scoops, you don't need to use, triple the amount of water. And that's the main point, is you don't need to dilute the product to cause you to go to the bathroom.
And to speak to that, Seth, Kina just shares her feedback in the chat where she says, I used a whole scoop of the UCAN and mixed it with a half a scoop of protein in a 5-ounce flask, and it lasted me 3 hours on a 100-mile bike. Took a second bottle for the next 3 hours. So, and she says, love it. Also using it for my Ironman in November. So Kina is really showing that, a little UCAN can go a long way if you're training with it, which I assume she is doing. And so we have found that the more you train with it and the more your body gets used to utilizing UCAN and burning fat for fuel instead of relying on sugars and doses of carbs every 20, 30 minutes like you would do with the gels, the longer the product actually starts to last for you. And then to speak to Seth's point about the amount of water, she says she just mixed it with in a 5-ounce flask. And so that's definitely something that we have a lot of endurance athletes doing for ease. We're going to bring Mike on here in just a moment. He had a question, so I want to actually chat with him. But Rachel, just quickly while we're on this topic, on the same topic, Rachel asks, is it recommended to significantly reduce sugar intake to get the best results? I only use this for race day and pre and post workouts. So Seth, what would you say? Like, I'm not sure if Rachel's talking about reducing sugar intake, um, you know, during your endurance workouts when you're using UCAN, or if she's just talking about sugar intake overall in your diet. But maybe we can just quickly speak to both those points. So let's start with sugar intake. In the overall. Oh, she just responded and said sugar overall in the diet. So, really quickly, Rachel, in terms of having UCAN for your workouts, you want to try to, as much as possible, avoid the fast acting carbs or the sugars. To get the best effect from the product. So you wouldn't want to take UCAN and then take a gel 30 minutes later because you're getting that spike in blood sugar, and it's counteracting the steadiness in blood sugar that UCAN provides. But Seth, what about sugar intake overall in the diet?
Well, just as a dietitian, you try to limit sugar intake in general. Besides, um, so it's we have athletes, we have NBA athletes, and they have some of the worst diets in the world, and they're consuming high amounts of carbohydrates and sugars, and a packet of UCAN lasts them 3 hours for their games and their practices and their training. So the main thing is that pre-workout snack, you want to keep insulin low and you want to keep blood sugar steady. We have athletes using UCAN in all types of diets, high carbohydrate diets, lower carbohydrate diets, and it's really, it depends on the person, but the majority of people should try to keep those sugars low before their workout to not experience the swings in blood sugar. And if they want to have higher carbohydrate meals, they can have them outside of the workout period, or after a UCAN shake for recovery. So, but in general, during your training, if it's a long Ironman or if it's a longer duration exercise and you want to have some banana or you want to have something, small amounts not that bad, but as soon as you spike your blood sugar too much, you're going to have those swings. And, I was speaking with someone this morning, actually, who just, didn't need too many gels during a marathon, but she hated the drop in energy. She'd feel a quick burst, and then it would start to decline. And so you want to avoid sugar for that reason, and then plus the health implications, too, as, in terms of risks on overall health.
Let's bring Mike on. Let's see if we can get the technology right this time around, and he's got a question. So let's see how this goes. Micah, how's it going today? Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you great. You're coming in very clear. Go ahead, Micah.
Okay. I have a girlfriend and she has type 1 diabetes, and a couple months ago I had checked into your product and was looking for just things that could help her stabilize her blood sugar. And this is by far the best product I've ever found for that. But one problem we keep running into is 2 to 3 hours after exercise, her this is when we drink the UCAN, her blood sugar just plummets below 30, and she has severe hypoglycemia and almost goes into like a coma. She's had seizures on me before, and then we've gone weeks without using UCAN and just used like carbs, and she doesn't have that reaction with it. Her blood sugar will kind of it'll kind of jump around way much more than stay steady, but it won't drop significantly like that. And I was wondering, what are some things I could do to keep that from happening?
Well, I'll chime in, Varun.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good one for you.
Well, the first thing I'll say is we make no medical claims on type 1 diabetes. We look forward to more research in the future. But I guess to take a step back, is she using UCAN before her workouts and then experiencing this effect a lot later in the day? Is that what you're basically saying?
Yes. She drinks about 50 grams about 45 minutes before exercise, and then 2 to 3 hours afterwards, after exercise, when we get home and she starts to calm down, she drops.
So, and she's having, how long is her exercise usually for?
For about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right. So, and is she on a pump, or what is she doing insulin wise?
Right. Yeah, she's on an insulin pump.
so we make no claims, but sometimes you need to adjust the basal rate, and there's certain adjustments you might need. We don't make any advice because we don't make any claims, but you might have to adjust certain things because the carbohydrate just doesn't act the way other carbs do. So Vaughn, give him my email address. We might be able to address this. Maybe able to have an offline conversation and just help him a little bit more.
Definitely, and Seth, would it would it at all help her to take a serving of the UCAN right after the workout potentially? Would that be something she might try to help keep that blood sugar balanced?
That can definitely help. But the other thing is that exactly, because one serving it sometimes doesn't last 4 hours. Because there's exercise in there too. So that's what you gotta work on the dosing too.
Micah, I will send you Seth's email here, and I'll actually just type it in the chat for anybody that has any general questions that wants to reach out to Seth. But please do feel free to connect with him offline, and he'll definitely be happy to chat about this with you in more detail and see if we can come up with the solution.
Okay. Me and her, we've been documenting the results like a lot. About every 5 to 10 minutes, we've been checking her blood sugar, and we've documented everything that's been in her body for a couple months. So I have tons of documented information. I don't know if that would help, but yeah. Other than that, I love the product. It's just really scary. At one moment she'll be like 120, and within 10 minutes she'll just drop, and she's just fell over and passed out on me before. And we've tried to implement it during exercise. She'll sip on it, and it's still around the same time every day. It'll be around 4 o'clock because we start working out about 12:30, 1-ish, and she always seems to drop like around 4:30.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll see if we can hopefully get this right. So let's definitely something that Seth will chat with you about. Appreciate you coming on though, Micah. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Let's go to Erica's question. Erica says, if I'm using UCAN as an endurance athlete during training and for weight loss, I guess this is similar to the question Anthony had earlier. Is it possible to overdo the use of UCAN during the day? So I don't know if there's anything different you can add to Erica's question, but maybe you could just answer it again, Seth.
I mean, the main thing is this is a carbohydrate that's really a food product. There's no enzymes or chemicals used to make it. It was meant for kids originally. And if you're swapping out other carbohydrates, it's a healthier form of carbohydrate, and it's the way you'd want a carb to act. But the main thing is, you might have 3 scoops in a day. You might have 2 scoops before and after workouts, and then a scoop that's going to help you control your hunger later in the day. And that's the way a lot of people are using it. So you more want to think about it like the way you think about having oatmeal or or having a protein shake. It's not necessarily. Think of it more like a food instead of some type of specialty product. To speak to that matter, Karen asks, is UCAN okay for a 14-year-old competitive hockey player? My grandson needs to add some weight. Will this help? Is he too young? So it's sort of a 2-part question. The number one part is UCAN okay for a 14-year-old kid? Karen, the answer to that is absolutely. It is a food product. It was originally created for infants, so very safe. The process with which the carbohydrate is created, it's just non-GMO corn cooked with heat and water, completely natural process, so absolutely safe for young kids. Nutrition facts label, not a supplement label. So to that end, totally safe for your grandson. Seth, if her grandson wanted to add weight, what would you recommend that he do in conjunction with UCAN, or how would you recommend he implement UCAN? So I would simply use UCAN as the fuel source for his workouts. If you were to use it he might use it to keep his blood sugar steady, but add extra calories surrounding it. Just the way Ilysha was talking about adding protein and fats, he would want to get his calories outside of the workout period to be sure he's having optimal muscle recovery and gaining the weight he needs to gain. But a lot of our athletes a lot of collegiate football players use UCAN to gain weight without putting on excess fat. So he'd have it before his workouts, optimize fat burning during, and get the steady energy he needs. and then get his calories outside of the workout periods, higher protein meals and more calories outside of the workout period.
Let's try one more time. Scott's got a pretty incredible story, and I really want him to be able to come on and share it. I'm not sure if this is going to work, and we're going to be able to hear him, but let's try one more time. Scott, how's it going? Are you with us? Well, it's one of those things. Sometimes technology fails you when you need it the most. But Scott basically shares that he was doing the Everest challenge, which is 15,000 feet of climbing and 84 miles. And he said with UCAN, he had no bloating, no urgency to go to the bathroom. He was able to have consistent energy for over 7 hours, and it was the first time he's ever had to do that race without stopping. And so, he said that for him in these super endurance races, the bloating and the cramping was always a concern. And he said that completely didn't exist at all with UCAN. And what's really interesting, and Seth, you may know Scott Sabin. I don't know if the name might ring a bell to you, but he wanted to let you personally know that he, from a weight perspective, he broke the 169-pound barrier for the first time, and his weight got down to 166 pounds this time around when he was training with UCAN. So it's actually something that. So first of all, Scott, that's fantastic. Thanks a lot for sharing it. But the whole idea of endurance athletes training so hard but gaining weight is something we've been hearing more and more about. And Seth, maybe you could speak to that. Why are so many endurance athletes, when they're training at such a high clip, not seeing weight loss results?
Well, in general, it's because they're consuming too many calories during. You see the 300 calories per hour, too much sugar, and they're really getting locked into depending on only glucose burning. We've even seen we have Lance Leo out in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. He did a metabolic test on his treadmill, and at higher intensities, you can see the fat burning was only 12% with a fast acting carb, and with UCAN it was 53%, and this is at 10.9 miles per hour on the treadmill. So if you're burning through carbs during your workouts, you're not giving the body the opportunity to burn fats, and then if you replenish with too many calories afterward, you're never really giving your body the opportunity to become a fat burning machine the way it should be. I mean, the adaptation to endurance exercise is you're really supposed to be able to upregulate mitochondrial enzymes to be a better fat burner and spare your glycogen. But just with the amount of calories from sugar people are taking in, they're just not giving their bodies the opportunity to burn off the calories and the right calories.
So that's something definitely that I think UCAN can help folks with. It's possible to train for an endurance race and be healthy and experience, achieve weight loss goals at the same time. And then UCAN really, I don't want to say it makes it easy because, training for an endurance event is never easy, but if you are putting in that effort to train hard and you're utilizing UCAN as your fuel source, you're just going to naturally see that leanness and that fat burn get better just because of the nature at which you're training at. And UCAN's really the perfect nutritional source to support those fat loss goals. So it's definitely something that we've had a lot of endurance athletes tell us that has really made a huge difference. And Scott's one of them. So that's fantastic, Scott. Anyways, in closing, Seth, I think we're coming close to reaching the end of all the questions. So anything you want to emphasize for the folks that are still with us as we get ready to close this out? And if anyone does have any last minute questions, please feel free to address them to us, and Seth and I will definitely answer them.
No, I mean, the main thing is, this is an extremely versatile product, and this is extremely versatile carbohydrate that, really depending on how you want to get the benefits, you can use it in a variety of ways. Some people just might want to use it before their workouts to have steady and even energy and able to work out whenever they want. I mean, if you love to train, whether it's strength training or it's getting on your bike or it's running, you want to be able to do that whenever you want. And if you're working a 10 or 12-hour workday and you can't get your session in until at night, if you have a scoop of UCAN or a scoop and a half before a workout, you can do that session whenever you want. I mean, when I used to work out without UCAN and, was, trying to time meals perfectly. I mean, it's so tough to time a meal before you work out. If you have too many you're looking for energy, but if you have too many carbohydrates, like a classic, whole wheat bread, and some turkey, or you have too many carbs at once, blood sugar declines, and then your blood sugar is starting to decline right before you want to work out. So, you can finally, able to get your training whenever you like. And that's so important, because consistency with your training is one of the biggest things you need to do. And you don't want to miss sessions because your nutrition was off. So there's no more thinking about how am I going to feel here or how am I going to feel there, which is really what UCAN does. And that goes to, you take those same principles of what it does for your workouts. And I remember someone said that if you have a body, you're an athlete. And so if you are a teacher, you're a nurse, you're someone who just can't break in the morning, having a shake that Ilysha recommends with UCAN as the carbohydrate source. I mean, we do have some, you could add some protein powder. People have added Greek yogurt and some berries. You can extend the life of that protein shake, and the protein curbs that hunger in the stomach. The UCAN keeps you steady, and then, you're not locked into having lunch, at 12. You might go have this feeling of I could eat, but I don't have to. So you're not eating up based on the emotional hunger of low blood sugar, but you'll be eating based on that true physical hunger in the stomach. So it's much more easy to control what you eat when your blood sugar is not declining rapidly, like it happens to so many of us who feel like they want to eat our fingers at 11 o'clock in the morning after having breakfast at 6 or 7. So it's just very versatile. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, on Twitter, or email me at what the email address Varun had put in the chat. Experiment with the bites, and that's it, Varun.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to everybody. These things are only as good as the folks that we have. Well, actually, you know what, Seth? We do have one more person, Karen Nowalski. We want to bring her on. She wanted to share some feedback about how she's been using UCAN during the day, and because it's something so much that we've been talking about, I think it'll be valuable for folks to hear what somebody's doing. So, Karen, are you there with us?
Seth.
Yes.
Karen.
Hey, Karen, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We are doing fantastic. So we'd love to hear what you're doing and what you've experienced with UCAN.
Well, it's certainly been something that I've been using for quite a while now. At first, I really didn't care much for the product. It made me sick until I talked to you guys, and you had me started taking the stuff, within 15 minutes. It's not made to be sipped on, but we're in the midst of our marathon training, and I use the balls on my long runs and have concentrated the plane, and that's working quite well, and then started using it as a morning shake, and then that 3-4 o'clock afternoon when I get hungry, and that's really helped. So I have really enjoyed the product, really talked it up to a lot of people, and not a lot of people know about it.
We're doing our best to get it out there, because I think it can benefit, as we talked about, so many people in so many different ways. But Karen, what would be really helpful, I think, to folks is to know what exactly is your concoction when you're using it for breakfast, and what exactly are you doing when you're using it in the middle of the day.
Well, I'm just using the protein one with some MCT oil and coconut oil in the morning.
Okay, and yep. No, I was going to say, how long do you feel like when you take it in the morning, how long do you feel like that lasts you before, you want to have lunch or have a meal?
Easily 1 o'clock.
And what time are you taking it generally in the morning?
In the morning, I'm using it about 6:30.
Wow. Okay. So it's really, a 5-6 hour shake. So that's fantastic. And how about in the middle of the day?
Sometimes I'll use just the non-protein one about 3 or 4 o'clock, just as is, with some ice cubes. Maybe I'll put a little bit of almond milk in it too. So. Okay,
and are you sort of replacing maybe that afternoon cup of coffee or whatever you would normally snack on? Is that what's going on?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, that's great, Karen. It's always valuable to hear what folks are doing. It's one thing to talk about the theory of keeping blood sugar stable and what it could do for you, but to hear that people are doing it and it's making a difference for them in the middle of the day, that's tremendous. Well, So we
And
appreciate.
I wanted to thank the two of you. You're always there when I have emails or questions. You write back right away. You're very giving of your time, your recipes. It's been great.
Well, thank you. That's I think we're passionate about it, and we appreciate you. We appreciate you sticking with us. It's you didn't have a good experience at first, but we really appreciate you taking the time to make it work for you, and even for coming on and sharing your experiences. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
We're here anytime. So feel free to reach out to us as you continue using it.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Well, I think that's a nice positive note to end on. So we will close it out there. Thanks again to everyone for joining us. Thanks, Seth. Great as always to have you on, and you will all get a recording of this, like we mentioned a couple times. You'll get a couple recipes as well in your email, later this afternoon. So do look for that, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm Varun Sriram, joined by Seth Bronheim as always, and stay tuned to our Facebook, our Twitter. We'll be doing plenty more of these coming up over the next few months. We'll have a lot of interesting guests, a lot of different interesting topic areas. So stay tuned. The best is yet to come. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.